These selections are very, very difficult. We've talked about this in the past. I think for the playoffs, particularly of the Pro 14, the Guinness Pro 14, where we use so many players during the course of the season. At the best of times, whatever it is, whatever the number is, 53, and we've used numbers similar to that over the last number of years. Sometimes a little bit more. So then you get to the end of the season, and there's a lot of guys that have played maybe more minutes than other players that have come back in. And even this year, it's even more unusual because there's a 6-month break as well. So it's a very unusual dynamic. So we're at the end of a season, but it feels like we're at the start of a season, which is the 4th game. So there's so many different of these dynamics going on. So in terms of the selection itself, then it's trying to get a bit of a balance between, continuity of selection. As I said, the first 2 weeks we had, when we played Munster, we played Ulster, we changed the 15 completely. But as you get to these, knockout games, you're looking for a little bit of freshness and a little bit of continuity at the same time. So, that's what we've gone for. Without going into too much specifics about the individual selections, overall, there's a lot of guys that are not involved in 23 that can count themselves incredibly unlucky, because there's a lot of really, really close calls. But that's the nature of the squad that we have. It's very, very competitive. And off the back of such a long break, where a lot of guys have come back into the selection mix, I guess the best way of putting it, has made it even more competitive in many ways. Certainly in some positions, we've had some bangs and knocks in other positions where, which obviously has ruled some players out as well. So anyway, we think we've got a strong 23 that will hopefully represent the 53 that managed to play during the course of the year. We know it's going to be a tough challenge. Ulster, you saw them at the weekend against Edinburgh, and they stayed in the game right to the very end. So we are planning for a strong 80-minute game from them. So we need to make sure that we have that bit of punch coming off the bench for us as well.
And just a second and final question, if you don't mind, just in relation to Gary Ringrose as your captain. What qualities he has, what he brings, and why you picked him. There are probably other people who would have been in the running as well. That's the reality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is, so, if you think so, Devin Toner, someone of his experience, Ross Byrne is so integral to what we do. James Ryan is a key leader. I suppose James and Gary are two younger leaders in the group, really. And off the back of, if you think back to the start of this season, we were getting ready for a World Cup on one hand. So a lot of our players, international players, weren't here. So then we get a leadership group for the start of this season that we're still currently in. A good, whatever it is, year and 4 months on. So it's such a strange dynamic. But, likes of Gary has been excellent for us since he's come back from the World Cup. And I think he's grown in that leadership space all the time. He would have captained a team like late in the game against Munster when we played at the start of this current block of games. So he's definitely one for the future in terms of leadership ability. But he's plenty of support around him. I think even like Scott Fardy, Johnny clearly, and even Luke McGraw, guys have captained the team. So we're lucky in that regard that there's lots of experience that he can lean on in the group, but it's not just down to one person.
Leo, what is Johnny Sexton's reaction when you tell him he's not starting in a final?
We've been through this already before. I think with you guys and with the players, and as I said, earlier on the piece, it's not a straightforward selection for these games. Normally we go to the end of the season, and if you're lucky enough to be involved in fighting on two fronts, so to speak, you go from like last year's series, you go from the final of Europe into the semi-final of Pro 14, and if you're lucky enough to get through, then you're into the final. So it's making sure that you have guys that are able to give full of themselves on the day, and being fair to the group as well, and try to balance all the different variables as well. In terms of who's helped us get to this point, etc., etc. So we're blessed with the 4 halfbacks that we have, 2 9s and 2 10s that have built up a huge amount of experience over recent times. Ross is an international 10 at this stage. Johnny's got a wealth of experience, and I think he'll give good impact from the bench, whenever that may be. But But again, Ross, you have to remember how important he's been to the team over the course of this season, this very, very long season that we've had.
Leo, you say you were talking about players helping their team get to this stage. Ian Madigan certainly did that with a last gasp kick against Edinburgh. Were you surprised to see him named on the bench for Ulster?
No, I think he did a good job coming off the bench the last day, so you can see why Ulster would keep him in that same role. So yeah, for us, we need to make sure our discipline is good late in the game, because Mads enjoys some of those big pressure kicks for sure. Like more and more, like it's a 23-man effort. Obviously in the game itself, as I said, like we've used 53 players to get to this point, and like some of those players are no longer in the club; they've moved on to other clubs, and that's how unusual this dynamic is. So yeah, as I said, like the selections are not straightforward for these games. Even for us, it's trying to get guys even into the ground. And a lot of guys that are not selected have played a big part in getting us to a final. Won't even have the opportunity to come and be in the stadium on the day. So that's how unusual this dynamic is. So, but yeah, no, hopefully the 23 that we've selected will represent the group well. And yeah, we'd love to have all our friends and families and supporters that follow the team so closely at the ground. But it's important for us just to focus on the performance now at this stage. So, over the first 3 weeks of the season, we haven't quite got to the pitch where we want to get to yet. So, and that's where very much is at the forefront of our minds, and how we direct strong performance from our end. Hopefully the conditions are good and we avoid that downpour we had at 7 o'clock last Friday. So, but we're all excited now, looking forward to getting going.
And it's about how much of a boost it was to have James Ryan back in your team for Ulster. They've got Ian Henderson, a very timely return for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, two very important players for both teams. Two very important players in Irish rugby, I guess. And yeah, both of them are, they bring a strong physical presence, and they're key guys to their respective teams. So we'll see how they go. You're never too sure how guys come in. They both had similar layoffs in terms of time-wise. And yeah, we'll see how they both go. But yeah, as you rightly pointed out, they're important players, I think, for both teams. And again, that's the unusual dynamic again. You're into the fourth game of the season, but it's the end of the season. So it's what way are you looking at it? And we've had to weigh up a lot of different variables, and we're never too sure whether you get them all right or not. So we'll see how we go.
Leo, you've coached a good few of the Ulster team. Does that help?
This week we tried to really focus on ourselves more than anything else. We know lots about some of their players, but you could say that they know a lot about our guys as well, having been inside the camp here, so to speak. So there's always that threat when players leave a team and they come back to play against them. So we know that they'll be always highly motivated, is one thing, and that little bit of inside knowledge is always potentially a little bit dangerous as well. But yeah, we played Ulster a couple of weeks ago, so it's pretty fresh in memory for all of us. The squads and teams are slightly different, so it's just a new game. It's like get ready. The big thing is making sure we focus on ourselves. As you prepare all week, you're never really too sure what the selection of the opposition is going to be. So you just have to go about your business and understand some of the trends and different dynamics of, how teams set up with certain different personnel. We would have had a reasonably good guess as to what the Ulster team was. I'm sure they were pretty similar themselves.
Thanks.
No question mark though about Johnny's fitness. He's not carrying a knock or anything, is he?
No, Johnny's good, yeah. So yeah, no. And that's the thing, the 10s in particular nowadays, 9s and 10s, you have to take a lot on. In terms of the preparation of the team, the toll that takes, and because we've got, as I said, two very experienced at this point. Johnny is different level in terms of experience that he has, but between the two 9s and the two 10s, we're very lucky in that regard. So we've a lot of confidence in the guys to be able to mix and match like that.
Last one from the live pod, guys, if anyone's got one more.
Dan McFarland was saying earlier this week, he publicly anyway, saying that they only have a puncher's chance against you. He's playing it nicely leading up to this one, isn't he?
Yeah, like Ulster, you've got to give them a huge amount of credit the way they stuck in there last week and fought to the very end. And we know ourselves. We played Ulster in the quarter final, and we felt lucky to come away with a win that day. So that was last season. Yeah, I get confused by some of these seasons. It feels like a long time ago. But yeah, in the Aviva as well, quarter final. So again, slightly different teams, but same coaching, similar coaching groups. We've got a slight tweak of ours, but it's like it's going to be a full-on 80-minute game. And we need to make sure we're ready for that. So Ulster have made steady progress over the last number of years. They've a couple of personnel have come back into the mix for them, which I think will give them a boost as well. And it's very much down on the day. So it's important we get our bits right. Got to make sure we nail our basics and all the normal standbites that you get from a knockout game, similar to what was going into the semi-final last week. So it's going to be a good challenge for our guys, and because we know Ulster the team that knows as well, and they will come full on at us. So make sure we're ready for that.